Hello everyone, welcome back to another science fair lesson. Today we're going to be learning how to write your analysis and your conclusion. Your opener should be found in your student notes. Your question for today is, how do you think your experiment went? What was the most interesting thing you noticed during the experiment? Go ahead and pause the video here so that you can complete your answer. Your objective for today is I can write an analysis and a conclusion based on my experiment data. Let's go over some directions. The goal for today is to finish writing the final two parts of your science fair project. Congratulations on making it through your experiment. We are now in the home stretch. Honestly, great job for completing your experiment, getting everything done. We're really getting close to the end here, and you've done a great job. You may have heard of an analysis paragraph and a conclusion paragraph before, but let's go over them together. Let's start with an analysis paragraph. An analysis paragraph should explain your data in words, and it should show any patterns or trends in your data. A conclusion paragraph, on the other hand, restates your hypothesis, explains if your hypothesis was correct or incorrect, and shows next steps for continuing the experiment. Your analysis and conclusion serve two different functions. If you've done lab reports or science fair experiments in the past, you may have learned this differently from other teachers, but this method is most consistent with what you would have to do in high school and beyond for a science paper or lab report. Let's go over an analysis paragraph example. So let's say my testable question was, does changing the size of a paper airplane affect how far it flies? This is the data that I collected during the experiment. So you can see I have all of my trials and I have averages calculated for each of my airplanes that I flew. Your data table may look very different depending on how you ran your experiment and what your variables were, but this is what mine looked like. So an example of an analysis paragraph for this testable question and this set of data would go like this. During the experiment, we flew each airplane a total of 4 times. Our 3-inch plane flew 10, 12, 14, and 11 feet in the different trials, with an average of 11.75 feet. Our 6-inch plane flew 14, 13, 16, and 15 feet in the different trials, with an average of 14.5 feet. The 9-inch plane flew 20, 22, 25, and 18 feet with an average of 21.25 feet. Overall, we can see that the 9-inch airplane flew the farthest on average. The 3-inch plane flew the least distance on average. So in this paragraph, I explained each line of my data table in words, and I said the overall patterns that I noticed in my data. This is really important when you write an analysis. You almost want to pretend like your reader isn't going to be able to see your data table when you write this. So think about explaining it in as much detail as possible, especially when it comes to giving those patterns. Now let's go over a conclusion paragraph example. So I'm using the same set of data and testable question. We're going to say my hypothesis for this experiment was, I believe that the smallest plane will fly the farthest because it will weigh the least. Now, because of what we wrote in our analysis paragraph, we already know that that hypothesis was incorrect, but now we need to explain it. Even though your hypothesis should be in your final paper, it's kind of similar to the analysis in that we're going to pretend that our reader doesn't actually know what our hypothesis is when we explain this. So here's what the paragraph would look like. Before the experiment, my hypothesis was that the smallest plane would fly the farthest because it was the lightest in weight. After conducting the experiment, I can see that my hypothesis was proven to be incorrect. The 3-inch plane actually flew the shortest distance overall. The biggest plane flew the furthest instead. If I was to continue this experiment, I would test 3 different planes of the same size and add different weights to them to see if weight has an impact on flight distance. So in this paragraph, I restated my hypothesis right there at the beginning. I explained whether or not my hypothesis was correct or incorrect, gave a little bit of an explanation as to why, and then explained what I would do if I was going to continue this experiment. So in this case, because my prediction regarding weight was the part that was incorrect, I could run the experiment again, testing weight as a variable instead of size. We're going to go ahead and start work time. Here is what you need to keep in mind as you are writing. Your criteria for your analysis paragraph is to make sure each data category is mentioned, especially overall averages. You need to put any patterns you notice at the end of the paragraph, things like highest or lowest, things that had the same results, things that had unusual data, stuff like that. The whole paragraph should be at least 5 sentences, but more is better, although you might want to stop before getting into the double digits because that's a really long paragraph. Your criteria for your conclusion paragraph is to restate your hypothesis, prove or disprove your hypothesis using your data. This means saying if it's correct or incorrect and why. Explain your next steps, and again, it has to have at least 5 sentences. You can go ahead and sit with your group if needed and pause the video here to keep this criteria up. If it's more beneficial for your class to have the examples up during this time, you could also go back in the video and pause it there as well. Wrapping up today's lesson, here's what you need to bring to the next class. You need a finished analysis paragraph and a finished conclusion paragraph. You will also need to make sure that these items are turned in according to your teacher's directions. Next week, we will be creating your presentation. Please make sure all parts are done before then because it's going to make creating the presentation a lot easier for you. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I will see you next time.